Now we can move on to the general look and feel of the image. Now we've got it, we've done the cleaning, we've done the dodging and burning, we've done the color correction. So let's have a look at the overall feel of the image. We already know what the general color is going to look like, and that's this, because we know from the brief that they decided they liked this color. So we don't need to worry about that too much. But what else can we do at this sort of stage to try and enhance the image? Okay, so let's try drawing a bit more attention to the face than the rest of the frame. So a great way to do that is by using like contrast. So I'm just going to grab a curves layer and I'm just going to drag down a little bit, not too much, just a bit. And with a black brush, I'm just going to paint in the mask here, just so it makes it a little bit brighter than the rest of the frame. So I'm going to come down a bit as well. So it's just drawing the viewer to look at more the face than other aspects of the image. Like that. Let's do some brush strokes on the butterflies as well. Don't want them to feel left out. But I still think we can do more with the contrast. So including the actions is a load of luminosity masks. So if you run this action, it's going to create a load of different channels for you. So as soon as this is done loading, let's flip over to the channels and we can see we have, starts from lights here. Just get rid of these ones. Let's get rid of the green. Okay, so it starts from the lights, which is showing this light, then lighter light, so it's making the selection smaller, more refined to the highlights. Even more so the next one, then really refined in the highlights on that one. And it does the same with the darks, but in reverse. Then also the midtones as well. So let's add a bit more contrast into shadow areas. So I'm going to let's have a look at shadow darks. Yeah, this one might be quite a good one. See, let's have a look with darks. So I'm going to click on the RGB channel and I'm going to hold control and click on darks. It's going to make a selection of marching ants. If I come back over to the layers area and I click on curves adjustment, I'm just going to drag down in there. Something you might also want to do is grab a hue saturation layer and just hold out and hover in between the two layers and just clip it to it. And just bring down the saturation, because increased contrast in shadow areas will increase the contrast as well. Let's just toggle that on and off. It's probably a bit too far, but I'm going to just pull back on the opacity of the layer instead of actually adjusting the curve I just made. So somewhere about there, I think. We may be able to do a bit with the highlights as well. So let's grab the, let's have a look. Yeah, like the bright lights I'm going to grab. I'm going to do the same principle. Just going to pull up those just a bit so it makes it a bit more shiny there. Just toggle that on and off. So it's just having effects on the highlights. Something you do want to notice if you do use luminosity masks and they're in the channels like this, it's going to have a greater increase on your file size. So before you go out and save the files, you want to make sure you delete all the ones you don't want, or if you don't need them all, then just get rid of them. Otherwise you're going to be having quite a lot of large file size because of it. So we've done quite a bit of changes here. We've just affected the darks and we've just affected the lights. And we've also taken some saturation out of the shadows, because the byproduct of increased contrast is increased saturation. And I'm pretty happy with how this is looking at the moment. So I'm just going to toggle the look folder on and off. And I think I'm pretty happy with that. I think I might want to take a bit of saturation out on one of these areas here. I think I want to make sure this is the desaturate. No, that's increased. What's this one? That's going to be a red channel one. Yeah, just a bit. I know I've gone back slightly, but I often, when retouching, is I'll come back in a stage if I notice something. That's the brilliant thing about working non-destructively. You can make fixes any time if you see it, as long as you can go all the way back down through the layer stacks and know how things affect each other. but I'm pretty happy with that. So let's move on. Another aspect of color correction, which is vitally important to a series of images, is unifying them together and making them look the same. Now, the photograph on screen on the right, we're pretty much done with. We're happy with that, and we're happy with the color. That's fine. But the one on the left, which we started with the skin work, which I've now done the dodging and burning and the color correcting on, that does not look the same. So we need to translate our final color look from our right-hand image into our left one. And that takes a little bit of work. But what I'm going to do, first of all, is I'm just going to drag our agreed on look over to our new file. So I'm just going to hold shift, click on this look 8 and drag it into the new one to see how that looks. It doesn't really look the same at the moment, and I wasn't expecting it to look like that either. So the reason why is because they've got different kind of makeup, the lighting has hit the skin a bit differently, and the background's a bit different because they maybe have been a bit closer to the background on this left shot. So I'm going to bring this all together, but before I do these color tweaks, I want to fix some of the issues with Liquify at the moment. So I'm just going to bring this file at full screen and do a bit of liquefying. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to deactivate that color look layer which we just dragged in, and just below it I'm going to create a merged visible layer of everything by holding Command, Alt, Shift and E. And this will now be the layer which we're going to be liquefying on, because I'm happy with everything which is below, and above will be our color work and contrast. Then any amendments which may need to do, then we'll do it above that. So let's go into Liquify. What I'm looking at here is the hairline specifically. I'm just going to grab the forward warp tool, and I'm just going to zoom in a bit as well to work on this hairline. So you got like areas like this here, which I just want to make a bit more of a unifying structure to it. So if you look at my settings, I've got a brush size of 200, which I'm controlling via my hotkey, so I can go down and up as I wish. Got a pressure of 10, density of 50, and I've also pinned the edges. Although it's not really important in this image, if you are working on an image where things do go to the edge of the frame, which you don't want to move, then if you click that pin edges, then it won't drag those away. So I'm just going to work around the hairline and just neatening it up. I can see some areas which I'm going to have to go in and clone away as well anyway, but let's just make a general shape here. I don't want it to be too perfect. I still want it to have some of that realism to it, but I just want to take down some of the peaks which catch my eye. And this is the sort of thing which I'll do on every image, going through them and just making sure that they've got nice lines throughout the image, just kind of pushing them and pulling them until I'm happy. Maybe give the hair a bit more volume if required. But it's not just working on hair which you can use Liquify, of course. You can use it on anything which stands out to you. But you do have to be careful, because you are basically dragging pixels, and it will look a bit off if you drag things too far. See, little fixes like this. I think I'm probably going to clone some of them away. Let's have a look. Let's try and make this a bit here, a bit more nicer shape. And those are fine with. Let's have a quick check around everywhere else. Okay, I'm going to OK this, and I'm going to create a blank layer above this. And I'm just going to call this Fixes. And I'm going to grab my clone stamp brush. I'm going to come in and just fix some of these areas here. Like these, which kind of stand out when looking at it as a full frame. Especially like these ones around by the ear. Let's get rid of that bit of hair which is peeking out behind the ear as well. Now let's get rid of some of these. And let's go up towards the top. Let's get rid of this one as well. I'm just picking my sample point pretty close to the area, so then it's not going to have too much of a luminosity change with the background. And this is kind of the areas which I was thinking which mainly needed to be healed. and clone. So let's just straighten some of these up a bit. Let's add a little bit in there. And the same here. And just move around the hair. So this bit, I think I'm just gonna do that. So I'm working from both sides of the hair to get to that one result. Just continuing round. So you've now created some repeating patterns. So I'm just gonna come in here and just try and negate those a little bit. And this bit, I think I'm just gonna round it off there. Get rid of some of these as well. Okay, so I think I'm just going to zoom out and have a look at that. And I'm just going to come in and just tweak this just a little bit. Let's have a look at that. I'm zoomed out a bit. It's always good to zoom in and out of this so you can see how much of the hairline you're following and making sure you're not creating any weird shapes and like bulbous areas. And this is a slicked backed hair look, so we're happy with some straight edges. Well, some sharp edges on the hair. Let's have a look. I think there's probably a bit too much bulbousness there, but yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a layer mask on here, and I'm going to paint with black, and I'm just going to come over this here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this layer and that one by holding shift. So you can click on one layer at the top, then press shift and it'll select the next layer you click on. Or if you go all the way to the bottom, then it'll select all those layers. However, if you hold command or control, then you can pick up individual layers if you want along the layer stack. But I just want these two together, and I'm going to merge those layers, and I'm just going to do one final liquefy. And once again, I'm going to be using the forward warp tool. I'm just going to tweak this a little bit. Just pushing it and pull it until I think it looks good. Let's just have a look at that. I'm pretty happy with that to move on to unifying the color for the actual whole look. So I'm going to bring the two files up side by side. I find this really helps me because I can see the colors as they are being applied to it. So I'm going to activate that look layer and see what we need to do. Immediately I'm seeing that the skin on the left hand side is very much more magenta than the right. So I'm going to grab a curves layer and come into the green channel. I'm going to pick a sample point somewhere around about here on the forehead, and I'm just going to add some green into this to see how this looks. See, already that's looking quite good, but it's quite hard to tell because the backgrounds are very dark on the right hand side than the one we're trying to work on now. So let's have a look at this. So I'm going to create another curves layer, and I'm going to drag and I'm going to grab the sample tool. I'm going to click here and I'm just going to drag it down till it's about the same kind of luminosity. So we're around about there. And now the color's off. So I'm going to grab some magenta. I'll push a bit of magenta into this. I'm going to take a little bit of red. It'll take a bit of time to learn what colors you need to move to be able to get this, but if you have a play with trying to do it, then it does come relatively quickly. You do have to spend time trying to do it. I think I've made it a bit too dark now though. So let's just bring that up a bit. Now, of course, this is applying to the whole image, which is not what we want to do. There are various different methods which we can use to isolate the background, but I'm just going to do a quick mask and just paint in there. So I'm going to bring it up full screen and grab my black brush, and I'm going to come in and just start painting this away. Let's do it just roughly to start with to see how it's going to look. Just want to get the majority of this. Of course, this isn't perfect by any stretch, but let's just get them side by side again to see how they look. So they're getting pretty close. I mean, I think if I just mask this out, I think I might increase the saturation a little bit as well. So under that background layer, I'm going to create a hue saturation adjustment layer and just up the saturation a bit. I think that looks quite good. Maybe just a little bit less, about there. Let's go full screen again, and I'm just going to neaten up this mask. So I'm just coming in with a brush, coming right to the edges, just mixing up the different brush sizes depending on which area I'm working on. I'm just going to come around and mask it all out. Masks do take time to work with, and the more time you do put into it, then the better the result will be. So you don't want to create haloing effects outside of the model, so do put the time in, it is worth it. Of course, on the jewellery, we don't want it to be any darker than what it already was. Let's get a bigger brush and cover a bigger area. Oh, see, I've gone a bit too far there. So just back up. Now, if I turn pen pressure on, what this is going to allow me to do is going to be, depending on the amount of pressure I put on the brush, will be the size of it right now, because I'm just using a plain brush. It isn't a custom brush or anything like this. And if I just, so I can work a little bit easier into the sides. Come in there. Get rid of that. If I do go over, I'll just either go back a step, or I'll just paint with white to make the adjustment layer have its effect again. So this is going to take a bit of time to do this. So I'm going to do this off camera, then we can have a look once it's done. Okay, see you in a minute. Let's have a look at them side by side now. Okay, so I'm just going to bring them up together and get the face roughly in the same sort of position on the frame. And I'm thinking that that's looking pretty good. I mean, the makeup is different, but it's a different look. But they do have some unifying qualities. I think I want to adjust the background a bit more. There is definitely a bit more color in the background than our one. So let's, I think I'm going to add a bit of red in, see how that looks. Let's get a bit closer and let's pop a bit more blue in. Let's have a look at that. Now I'm pretty happy with that. So let's just zoom out a bit more on that, and on this one I'll zoom out as well. So there are different luminosity values still. So let's raise the luminosity of this one again. Just gonna use my arrow keys to push that up. And right now I'm thinking I want to take some blue out because I've done that. And maybe take some magenta out as well. I mean, at this point, I'm pretty happy with how those two look together. They are different shots from different looks, so I've got to kind of bear that in mind. Obviously, as I said, the makeup is different, the garments are different, so they're going to have different looks, and the skin is a little bit differently. The one on the right, it takes up more highlights. I mean, I could push some of the highlights up on the left one if I wanted to, but I think that would end up making it look a little bit too fake, so I'm just going to ignore that. But I'm ready to save this off and then move on to the next stage.